The Holocaust was a mass genocide of the murder of 6 million Jews by Nazi Germany and its collaborators. The Holocaust is a word of Greek origin meaning sacrifice by fire. The Nazis who came to power in Germany on January 1933 believed that Germans were racially superior and that the Jews were an alien threat to the so-called German racial community.
What was Mom's life before the Holocaust?
My mother's maiden name was Celia Imber. She was born in 1927 in the little village of Smakowska in Poland. She was the first grandchild of a large family of aunts and uncles and grandparents. She was treated like a princess, and every week she would travel by horse and buggy to the larger city of Tarnopol and go to private school. She came from a very wealthy family who owned a lot of land and raised cows and horses and chickens and supplied the town with all their dairy products.
Nazi is a short name for National Socialist German Workers' Party. The Nazi Party was a political party in Germany established in 1919 in the aftermath of World War I. It grew in popularity through the 1920s as the country struggled with the fallout of World War I. Germany lost the war and was forced to pay a lot of money to the winners. Many people were poor and there weren't enough jobs to go around. And the one reason why many Germans turned to the Nazis was the hope that they would bring about change. Nazis were racist and believed that what they called their Aryan race was more important than others. The Nazis believed that Jews, Gypsies, black people, and other ethnic groups were inferior to the Aryans. Nazis were ruthlessly anti-Semitic, and this affected all their policies and actions. They also believed that Germany was a better country than others, and their people's superiority meant that they could and should dominate other people. This led Germany to invade and take over other countries before and during World War II. In 1921, a man called Adolf Hitler became leader of the party. Then in January 1933, the Nazis were invited to form a government after they voted as the largest party in an election. From the moment his party came to power, Adolf Hitler set out to impose Nazi values on all aspects of German life, taking control using fear and terror. When the German president Hindenburg died, Hitler declared himself to be the supreme leader of Germany. The party used lots of propaganda to persuade people to support them. They held big gatherings called rallies and loudspeakers in public places and shouted out Nazi messages. From the moment they came to power in 1933, the Nazis persecuted people who didn't think they were worthy of the members of the society, most notably Jewish people. They introduced laws that discriminated against them and took away their rights. Jewish people were not allowed in certain places and were banned from getting certain jobs.
Did Mom lose any close friends or family during the Holocaust?
Yes, in 1939 the Germans came to her small village of Smakowski and gathered up all the men and took them to a valley nearby and shot them and killed them all. Then they came and gathered up all the women or anybody else in the little village and took them to a ghetto by the name of Skalet, which was a few miles up the road. And there, my mom stayed for a couple years. As the years went on, people were being killed every week, every month, as they went from one building to the next to kill all the Jewish people in that building. What was left was her mother and her aunt. And that was in the year of 1942. They were getting to the last building to terminate the ghetto. And her mother said to her, "You need to save yourself. Go out and go to the town of Tarnopol and go to the priest that we know, because we used to supply all the dairy products to the convent, and ask him to help you and save you."
The Jewish population of Europe stood at over 9 million. Most European Jews lived in countries that Nazi Germany would occupy or influence during World War II. The Germans and their collaborators killed nearly 2 out of every 3 European Jew as a part of the final solution, which is the Nazi policy to murder the Jews of Europe. Many groups of people were involved in carrying out the Holocaust. There were 2 Nazi groups in particular which organized the killing of Nazi enemies, but also relied on informants to tell them what people were up to. The German army also played a role, too, in enforcing the Nazis' brutal rule. The SS was a military-style group of Nazis founded in 1925 who were like Hitler's personal bodyguards. They were in charge of overseeing the killing of people in the camps. Part of the SS were put in charge of killing many people before the extermination camps were opened, to carry this out on a much greater scale. The SS also took control of the intelligence, security, and the police force. The Gestapo, established in 1933, were the secret state police. This group was in charge of rounding people up to send them to the camps. The Nazis considered Jews to be the main danger to Germany. Jews were primary victims of Nazi racism, but other victims included gypsies, people with mental or physical disabilities, Russians, and Polish people. The Nazis murdered around 200,000 gypsies, and also they murdered at least 250,000 mentally or physically disabled patients. As Nazi tyranny spread across Europe, the Germans and their collaborators persecuted and murdered millions of other people. Between 2 and 3 million Soviet prisoners of war were murdered or died of starvation, disease, or brutal treatment. The Germans deported millions of Polish and Soviet civilians for forced labor in Germany or in Poland, where these individuals worked and often died under horrible conditions. German police officials targeted thousands of political opponents, including communists, socialists, and trade unionists.
Did anyone help Mom during the Holocaust to help her survive?
Yes. After the ghetto was dissolved, her mom told her to go to the priest in the nearby town of Tarnopol. He was able to help her by giving her fake ID papers, and with those fake papers, because she was blonde and blue-eyed, she looked very Polish as opposed to looking Jewish. So the fake papers enabled her to travel through the countryside of Poland. And with those papers, he also wrote her a note to give to this convent that was many, many miles away on the other side of Poland, to go to this convent, and the Mother Superior would take care of her and put her and save her in the orphanage that they had for the children. It took her a while, it took her 3 months to get to the other side of Poland, and by doing that she would travel at night and hide in the field and hide in people's barns and eat potatoes out of the ground or any kind of food that she could find to survive. At one point she was able to get on a train to help her get further into her journey, and there was a conductor on the train that caught her hiding, and he was going to take her to the Germans because he knew that she was probably Jewish if she was hiding. With that, Mom was able to bribe him and give him her little gold earrings, and by doing that he allowed her to live. When she got to the convent with her fake ID papers and the note from the priest, the Mother Superior took her in and kept her in the orphanage with the other children, never ever telling anybody that she was Jewish.
November 9th, 1938, when there was a night of terrible violence against the Jewish people. It became known as the Night of the Broken Glass due to all the smashed glass that covered the streets from the shops that were raided. 91 Jews were murdered, 30,000 were arrested and sent to concentration camps, and 267 synagogues were destroyed. On September 1st, 1939, Germany invaded Poland, which marked the start of World War II. Throughout the spring and summer of 1938, the German army expanded Hitler's empire in Europe, conquering Denmark, Norway, the Netherlands, Belgium, Luxembourg, and France. Beginning in 1941, Jews from all over the continent were transported to the Polish ghettos. The German invasion of the Soviet Union in June 1941 marked a new level of brutality and warfare. Mobile Nazi killing units murdered more than 50,000 Soviet Jews and others in the course of German occupation. Jewish people in Poland were forced to live in selected areas called ghettos, where they were treated very poorly and many were murdered. Conditions in the ghettos were very bad and many lost their lives as a result of disease and starvation. By the early 1940s, the Nazis were looking for a way they can kill a great number of people in a short amount of time in order to get rid of the Europe's Jewish population. They came up with an idea of extermination camps in which they could kill lots of people. Auschwitz opened in 1940 and was the largest of the Nazi concentration camps. Located in southern Poland, Auschwitz intentionally served as a detention center for prisoners. However, it evolved into a network of camps where Jewish people and other enemies of the Nazi state were exterminated, often in gas chambers or used as slave labor.
Some prisoners were also subjected to barbaric mental experiments led by Josef Mengele. In the final months of the war, SS guards moved camp inmates by train or on forced marches, often called death marches, in an attempt to prevent the Allied liberation of large numbers of prisoners. As Allied forces moved across Europe in a series of offenses against Germany, they began to encounter and liberate concentration camp prisoners, as well as prisoners en route by forced march from one camp to another. The marches continued until May 7th, 1945, which is the day the German armed forces surrendered unconditionally to the Allies. Between 1941 and 1945, people were murdered on a scale that the world has never seen before. What did Mom do after the Holocaust was over?
For the next 2.5 years, she lived in the convent and was raised like she was Catholic. She participated in all of the teachings and traditions of the Catholic Church. One day, she heard a family nearby speaking Yiddish, and she remembered that she once spoke Yiddish too, and realized that she was still Jewish. After a while, she found out that the war was over and that this Jewish family told her that she can go back to her home village and look for family members in case any of them have survived. Sadly, none of them survived. On her way back to her little Polish town, she met my father on the train tracks, and they got friendly, and then they realized they had no one left, and they married. After my mother and father got married, they went to Czechoslovakia, where my sister was born. From Czechoslovakia, they went to Italy and were housed in deportation camps, waiting for the highest to sponsor them from someone here in the United States to accept us as a family and bring us to the States.
As soldiers fighting against Germany in World War II, Britain, the US, the Soviet Union, and their allies made their way across areas of Europe controlled by the Nazis, and they began to discover the camps. As it became clear that the Nazis were going to be defeated, the Nazis tried to hide their evidence of their crimes by destroying the camps. People who went in to liberate the camps have been spoken of the horrific scenes that they encountered. Many of those who were freed from the camps died even after liberations, as they were so ill from how they'd been treated. Life would be extremely difficult even after the end of the war. Many survivors found strangers living in their homes or were unable to find somewhere they could live. Countries did not want to welcome such a number of refugees. On December 11, 1946, the General Assembly of the United Nations ruled that genocide would be a crime under international law. Adolf Hitler killed himself before the end of the war, so it would not be possible to bring him to justice. In the years since World War II, Nazi figures have been prosecuted for their crimes. Many Nazis went into hiding even after the war and were not found, or have died before their crimes could even been found out.